So for somebody that's not in that world, maybe give us a visual of what that world looks like, both for students who are going there with maybe opposing ideas, as well as a professor that's in that world where 99% gives to one party, and you're just kind of trying to, and by the way, for the audience to know this, you were not supportive of anyone in 2016 on the right as candidates, right? I don't think you were even, so it's not like you're one that's a MAGA team or anything like that. You're just a professor that's trying to teach there. But maybe give us a visual of what it's like to be in that world today.
Sure, but not just 2016. I've never voted for a Republican in my life. So I'm not.
That's very important for the audience to know. That's very important for the audience to know that.
Yeah, I'm not not even am I not a right-wing maniac. I'm not even a right-wing guy, period. And so, you know, I believe, I'm an atheist as well, and I want to talk about that in the context of your question. So what does it look like? It looks like kids go into the classroom and they never hear the other side of the argument. They never hear an opposing view, and they certainly, if they do, which I doubt, but they never hear it from someone who believes it.
Why is that a bad thing?
Well, if you don't hear an opposing view, it's an indoctrination mill. You're going there to parrot back or regurgitate. You're not teaching people how to think and then making decisions on their own. It looks like only one view is forwarded. It looks like you can't question certain things that are morally fashionable, like equity. And most people, by the way, they don't even have the slightest clue what equity means, or diversity, or inclusion, or any of these things that have hijacked. I mean, these things are now infused in our institutions, and most people have no idea what they mean. Woke means to be awakened to the injustice in the world. And the more woke you are, the more you understand that you can never be woke enough, because reality is just infused with injustice and oppression everywhere. The vast majority of people have no idea what the word equity means. And, you know, the guy that you're going to fire after this episode, he's absolutely, he's absolutely correct. They've changed the meanings of words. So equity means to make up for, this is Ibn Kendi's definition, or part of his worldview that feeds into the definition. To make up for past injustices, we need future injustices and future and present injustices. So if people have been systematically discriminated against because they're, you know, gay or trans or black, we need to fix that by discriminating against people who don't have those characteristics. The other thing to think about with equity is you want equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. That's why the governor of New York, for example, has
AP classes.
Yeah, well, they're getting rid of the talented and gifted programs for kids, because the idea is it's an equity-based system. It's not. It's the opposite of equality. But the only reason I mention this at all is because one of the reasons that woke has made such inroads is that, in you know, when you ask David, most people don't know what these words mean, and so we're basing policies, educational policies for our kids in K-12 systems, for our judiciary, for our media. We're basing these for the ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center. All of these things are now a value that suddenly sprung into existence that nobody heard of 5 years ago. And
now, who's driving this, though? Who's driving these initiatives? Who's the mastermind behind this today? Because it seems like it's sudden that this happened in the last 5-10 years.
Yeah, that's correct. It started in the university system and it leaked out of the university system. Here's what happens. So kids go into the university system. Yeah. They're taught by people who believe this. These people are true believers. Okay. Not all of them, because they've created a culture of fear. So anybody who speaks up against it is a bigot, is a homophobe, is a racist, is a misogynist, is a Nazi in some cases. And so they have jobs for life. It's called tenure. They teach people, you know, basically what are moral conclusions. They test them on it. 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, these kids get out. They get out of the university. They go into the workforce. Because they have degrees, then they occupy positions of administration, management, etc., and they bring these ideas with them: the pronoun ideas, the safe spaces, the trigger warnings, the microaggressions. The nucleation point where this all starts is the university system, all of it. The main driver for this is the historical truth that there were real, genuine systemic oppressions, and that those oppressions still exist. And because they still exist, we need to overthrow the institutions that allow the perpetuation of systemic injustice. That's why the university is constantly talking about systemic injustice. And that's also, by the way, I don't know if you want to get down this rabbit hole, why they look at the police, they want to defund the police. Because the police are the things that are standing in the way of the current society that we have. They're upholding the institutions and the structures that we have. And if you can defund the police, then you can weaken those institutions by allowing people to revolt.
Who would like to see America's way of living, capitalism, all of that fall? Who would love to see that happen?
You're a good interviewer. Really, these are great questions. My friend Faisal Al-Muhtar, who heads Ideas Beyond Borders, he's an Iraqi refugee who's come to this country. He's an amazing human being. He was telling me, spending time with him was like dog years. It's like 7 to 1. He was telling me that that many places in the Middle East, primarily funded by China and Russia, have stations dedicated to BLM, dedicated to the divisive madness that's currently overtaking. So basically, the enemies of the United States want to see this succeed. They want to see these rebellions succeed. Meanwhile, there are people there are countries who are literally putting their own citizens in concentration camps, and you don't hear a peep about it from these folks. When, you'll hear about a gender imbalance at a conference, but when ISIS takes literal slaves, and we know that, we have the videos from the slave bazaars when they take Yazidi women, there's not a peep, there's not a protest, there's nothing. You don't hear anything about it. So to answer your question directly, there are countries like Russia and China and Iran to a certain extent who are directly funding the BLM and the accoutrements are the kind of the conceptual drivers for this. And then you have the people on the far left, the woke far left in particular, who really want to see the end to what they consider to be an oppressive patriarchal regime.
Subversion in Soviet terminology means always a destructive, aggressive activity aimed to destroy the country, nation, or geographical area of your enemy. Subversion can be only successful when the initiator, the actor, the agent of subversion has a responsive target. It's a two-way traffic. United States is a receptive target of subversion. There is no response similar to that one from United States to the Soviet Union. It stops halfway somewhere. It never reaches here. The highest art of warfare is not to fight at all, but to subvert anything of value in the country of your enemy, until such time that the perception of reality of your enemy is screwed up to such an extent that he does not perceive you as an enemy, and that your system, your civilization, and your ambitions look to your enemy as an alternative, if not desirable, then at least feasible. First stage of subversion is the process which is called basically demoralization. It takes from say 15 to 20 years to demoralize a society. Why 15 or 20 years? This is the time sufficient to educate one generation of students or children. What it includes? It includes influencing, or by various methods, infiltration, propaganda methods, direct contacts, doesn't really matter. I will describe them later. Of various areas where public opinion is formulated or shaped. Religion, educational system, social life, administration, law enforcement system, military, of course, and labor and employer relations. So, what happens here? The target country obviously does something wrong. If it's a free democratic society, there are many different movements within the society. There are obviously in every society there are people who are against this society. They may be simple criminals, ideologically in disagreement with the state policy, conscientious enemies, simply psychotic personalities who are against anything, right? And finally, there are a small group of agents of a foreign nation, bought, subverted, recruited, right? The moment all these movements will be directed in one direction, right? This is the time to catch that movement and to continue it until the movement forces the whole society into collapse, into crisis, right? So that's exactly the martial art tactic. We don't stop an enemy. We let him go. We help him to go in the direction we want them to go. These are the areas of application of subversion. What it means exactly. In case of religion, destroy it, ridicule it, replace it with various sects, cults, which bring people's attention, faith, whether it is naive, primitive, doesn't really matter. As long as the basically accepted religious dogma is being slowly eroded and taken away from the supreme purpose of religion, to keep people in touch with the supreme being, that serves the purpose. Therefore, replace it, accepted, respected religious organizations with fake organizations. Distract people's attention from the real faith and attract them to various different faiths. Education. Distract them from learning something which is constructive, pragmatic, efficient. Instead of mathematics, physics, foreign languages, chemistry, teach them history of urban warfare, natural food, home economy, your sexuality, anything, as long as it takes you away. The natural bodies of administration, which are traditionally either elected by people at large or appointed by elected leaders of society, are being actively substituted by artificial bodies. The bodies of people, groups of people, whom nobody elected. Never. As a matter of fact, most of the people don't like them at all, and yet they exist. One of such group is media. Who elected them? How come they have so much power? Almost monopolistic power on your mind. They can rape your mind. But who elected them? How come they have a nerve to decide what is good and what is bad for the elected by you, president, and his administration? Who the hell are they? Spiro Agnew, who was hated by the liberal left, called them a bunch of enfeebled snobs. And that's exactly what they are. They think they know. They don't. The level of mediocrity. In a big establishment like New York Times, Los Angeles Times, major television network, you don't have to be excellent journalist. You have to be exactly a mediocre journalist. That's easier to survive. There's no competition anymore. You have your good, nice income, $100,000 a year. That's it. Whether you are better or worse doesn't really matter anymore. As soon as you are smiling to the camera and do your job. That's it. No more competition. Power structure slowly is eroded by the bodies and groups of people who do not have neither qualification nor the will of people to keep them in power, and yet they do have power. Okay. Together with that, there is another process. Law enforcement, law and order organization and structure is being eroded. For the last 20, 25 years, if you see old movies and new movies, you can see that in new movies, a policeman, an officer of the United States Army looks dumb, angry, psychotic, paranoid. A criminal looks nice, kind of, well, he smokes hash and shoots the whatever drug, but basically he's a nice human being. He's creative. And he's unproductive only because society oppresses him. whereby a general of Pentagon is always, by definition, a war maniac. A policeman is a pig, rude policeman. He abuses his power. No? A generalization like that. The hatred, the mistrust to the people who are supposed to protect you and enforce law and order. A slow substitution of basic moral principles, whereby a criminal is not a criminal actually. He's a defendant, even if his guilt is proven. Okay, labor relations. At this stage, within 15 to 20 years, we destroy the traditionally established links of bargaining between employer and employee. Of course, it would be too naive to expect that KGB makes that advertising agency to do such a crazy commercial. No, of course not. But what we did when I was working for Novosti Press, we would snow plow editorial offices, student organizations, religious groups with literature of class struggle. If not directly Marxism-Leninism propaganda, then a propaganda of legitimate aspirations of working class, betterment of life, equality. Equality, mind you. President Kennedy once said, we will make America to believe that people are born equal. Are people born equal? Is there any mentioning in the Bible or any other holy scripture in any religion, if you don't believe me, go to the library and check it, there is not a single word about equality. Just the opposite. By your deeds, God will judge you. What you do is important. The merit of your personality. You cannot legislate equality. If you want to be equal, you have to be equal. You have to deserve it. And yet we build our society on the principle of equality. We say people are equal. We know it is false. It's a lie. Some people are tall and stupid. Others are short, bold, and clever. If we make them equal by force, if we put the principle of equality in the basis of our socio-political structure, it's the same thing as building a house on sand. Sooner or later it will collapse, and that's exactly what happens. And we, as Soviet propaganda makers, are trying to push you in the direction which you go yourself. Equality, yes, equality. People are equal. Land of equal opportunities. Is it true or not? Think about it. Equal opportunities. Should there be equal opportunities? For me, and for a lazy bastard who come here from some other country and immediately registers as a welfare recipient benefits? I never received a single dollar. No, sorry, I did receive once. But I never applied for welfare. For the 13 years, I took any job. Security guard, journalist, taxi driver, anything. Well, I was restless, but some people don't like it. They immediately. So why should we have equal opportunities? Why?
The equal opportunity to excel.
Equal opportunity in equal circumstances, yes, but you know people are different. To excel, yes, provided we reach the same level of excellency, perfection, which is hypothetical, distant future. Yes, maybe. But we know perfectly well that even with the best intentions, people could not be equal. Why should we have equality in the, say, legal system? Myself, I'm considering myself a law-abiding citizen, and a person who comes here to rob and shoot, say, the United States administration under Carter, imported thousands of Cuban criminals. They were non-criminals, yet they were accepted. Do you think it's fair if myself and my wife from Philippines, who work like excuse me, horse, as a lab technician in a hospital, should have the same rights as a criminal from Cuba? Why? And yet we repeat as parrots, equality, equality, equality. And the Soviet propaganda system helps us to believe that equality is something which is desirable. Democracy, as it was established by fathers of this country, of this system in the last century, is not equality. It's the system where different people, unequal people, have a chance to survive and help each other in constant competition, in constant perfection, not in equality, which is superimposed from a godfather or a nice person in Washington, D.C. And the absolute equality exists in Soviet Union, quote-unquote equality. Everybody is equal in dirt, except some people are more equal than the others in Politburo.